Right, ladies and gentlemen, that sound you hear in the background is the familiar sound of 70-year-old Nature Boy Ric Flair bringing us into a new episode of Woo Fantasy.
Woo!
And the very lackadaisical woo in the background was that of Mr. Nick Heffley, co-host back again. We're ready to kick things off for the 2019 season. Nick, how are you doing this evening?
And we're back!
And we're back!
I'm awesome, man. Awesome. About to kick things into high gear for baseball season, but I'm sitting here watching combine stuff. So it is, as usual for you and I, it is always football season.
Yeah. The fun never stops when it comes to football season with us. Of course, as he just previously mentioned, Scouting Combine just wrapped up in Indianapolis this last week. Lots of news and tidbits coming out of that. That's what we're going to cover in this episode this week. Just kind of want to touch base a little bit and some changes that have occurred since last you heard us on this podcast. I am now a proud member of rotoballer.com on a fresh new website for everyone out there to check me out. I've been putting out a lot of information over the course of the last month, getting everybody ready for the Scouting Combine and getting everybody ready for Dynasty drafts that might be coming up
What was that? Dynasty drafts?
Dynasty drafts as we're heading into March and April. Of course, we got free agency coming up this month in March. Draft next month. Right down the road, Nashville, Tennessee. We will be there. The Woo Fantasy Podcast will be in Nashville for the festivities of the 2019 NFL Draft. I will have my booing Roger Goodell shoes on and ready to go. I know Nick is just as psyched as I am for the trip to Nashville.
Wait, they're booing Roger Goodell's shoes? You actually have, like...
Oh, yeah, no, it's like you wear your dancing shoes. I'm going to have shoes strictly for booing Roger Goodell. Help me kind of up my voice to where I can get above the crowd so where he can strategically hear me over everyone else. Because if you've listened to this podcast in the past, you know my disdain for Roger Goodell as NFL commissioner.
Gotcha. Okay. No, I was thinking, you had like the Run Rich Run shoes that he had, like the St. Jude shoes from Under Armour. I thought you went out and got some Boo Roger Goodell shoes.
Yeah, and to tie it back, kind of put a bow on this whole thing. I fully expect Bill Belichick to just stop in the middle of our podcast while we're at the draft, walk up to me and hand me a check, just like he did Rich Eisen at the Combine this last weekend. That would make my entire year if something like that were to happen. But I digress.
I'll be waiting with bated breath for that.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty sure Bill Belichick could give a rat's ass about what we're doing on the Woo Fantasy Podcast. But anyways, yes. Scouting Combine wrapped up this last weekend. We're going to kind of cover some of the tidbits, some of the news and notes from the Combine. I want to kind of start off with, I guess, probably the biggest news coming out of the Combine. Has to deal with Kyler Murray. Did not work out at the Combine, but all of the indications that we have coming from the weekend, Cliff Kingsbury is making it sound as though no-brainer, number one pick, Kyler Murray. What say you with that pick, if that were to pass?
Yeah, I think at least as far as that goes, with Cliff Kingsbury, you want to get somebody that you're familiar with. You may or may not be, comfortable with having somebody like Josh Rosen run your offense, but apparently he, has recruited and really wants Kyler Murray. Well, he wanted him to stay in college, and now he wants him in the pros. Is that just a smokescreen to get somebody to move up? Who knows? But at least as far as Kyler Murray goes, and for our purposes, Kyler Murray is going to give you a top 10 guy, unless he just absolutely bombs at his pro day, which I don't see happening. I think which is one of the main reasons that he didn't throw or do anything really during the combine. Kyler Murray's going to go in the top 10. Whether it's Arizona, whether they trade Josh Rosen, or whether, somebody like Jacksonville gets him, or somebody like the Dolphins trades up into the top 10 to get him, he's going to go top 10.
Yeah, and kind of some things that I've been seeing over the course of the last couple of days. Some news that came out today was that the Redskins were in talks with the Miami Dolphins, or the Miami Dolphins, I guess, engaged in talks with the Redskins about trading Ryan Tannehill to Washington. So we're going to have a little bit of quarterback movement there. So if, say, Tannehill goes to Washington, of course, that was the rumored destination for a Josh Rosen, with the Cardinals expected to take Kyler Murray at 1 now. Say Tannehill goes to Washington. What's a likely landing spot for Josh Rosen? Because I believe the Cardinals are almost going to be boxed into a corner to have to deal him. I know they could sit tight on the guy, but, Josh Rosen seems like a type that's going to be an absolute cancer in the locker room if he's not the starting quarterback.
You can't pay 2 quarterbacks first-round money. You can't do that. You got to deal them off. Now's the time to deal him off. Now's the time before the draft to be able to deal him, because that way, his value's not going to be higher. The second you draft Kyler Murray, Josh Rosen's value at least diminishes a little bit. The one rumor I heard, and I don't know what kind of truth there is to it, but honestly, I think it would make a little sense. But I've heard Josh Rosen to the Patriots. Patriots certainly have a number of picks to be able to do. I don't know what he would bring, but that may be an interesting spot, a developmental guy. Maybe some of these teams like the Saints, the Chargers. Maybe they take a chance on somebody like Josh Rosen because the likelihood of them having to go a ton is not there. Maybe you give up a second round pick, third round pick, whatever his value is, because that's a lot better than if you would have drafted him last year as your developmental guy. So I would think one of these teams that have an established veteran already, that this can kind of be the next pick of the future. I think that's a lot more likely scenario.
Yeah, I could see that. The Patriots did decline to interview any of the quarterbacks at this year's combine, which kind of throws a little bit, for me, kind of throws a red flag. But yeah, Rosen to the Patriots doesn't seem like a bad idea. The Giants, I think, can probably throw their name into the hat there. Second, third round pick. Get Rosen in there, the guy that they should have drafted anyways in the 2018 draft. Instead, they went with Barkley, and we can't sit here and argue with the guy that was the rookie of the year and one of the top backs in fantasy in 2018. We can't argue that pick, but who's to say the Giants don't get involved with that? But say Kyler Murray's the number 1 pick. What's the dynasty outlook on the guy, or just in general his fantasy football outlook for 2019? How are we feeling Kyler Murray? Is he more leaning towards production value of Lamar Jackson, or is he going to lean more towards a Sam Darnold type, or are we looking kind of in the middle?
I think you're looking more in the middle. I think you maybe you're looking at a guy that's going to give you some rushing yards, but he has a lot better arm than Lamar Jackson did.
Yeah.
He's gonna go out there. He's gonna chuck the ball around. To me, and I tell you who he reminds me at least, or who I think, and obviously depending on the offense, but I think who I think I would say that he would be a little bit more like is maybe a poor man's version of Josh Allen. He's going to give you some good passing numbers. He's going to give you some rushing yards there every now and again. You're not exactly playing for the best offense in the world, so I think it could be one of those things dynasty-wise. He's going to be a first-round pick, borderline first-round pick.
Yeah.
I think depending on where, yeah.
I was going to say in dynasty, I've moved him up. I did release my top 24 on it's all kinds of social media platforms, but did put it out on Twitter, my top 24, and I've got Murray firmly entrenched into the top 10 right now in top 24 dynasty picks. So I definitely see him being the guy he'll be the first quarterback off the board. I've wrote about that in my combine observations article that went out on Rotoballer earlier today. So Now with redraft and season long leagues for 2019, I'm not so sure. That's going to be a guy. Maybe you draft him and hold on to him, or you let him sit on the wire for a little bit and pick him up. What do you think about 2019 for Kyler Murray?
Yeah, no, I think it's one of those things that a lot of the team that he goes to. If he goes to Arizona, he's probably going to start a little bit more immediately. I mean, what happens if he gets drafted by a team like Jacksonville where they're just about to pick up Nick Foles? He's not going to start immediately, so his value
Yeah.
diminishes. Same thing for Dwayne Haskins. Um, where is he going to go? Does he go to the Giants? Obviously, he's not going to be going year one. But depending, a lot of it's going to depend on where these guys go. What team is this quarterback apple of there? And quite frankly, too, what weapons surround him? I think is going to be another big out there as well.
Yeah, it's the thing with Arizona right now. You've got Christian Kirk coming into year two, Larry Fitzgerald returning for maybe his last season in the NFL. Outside of that, we're going with the newly acquired Charles Clay and the much ballyhooed Ricky Seals Jones, a guy that Cliff Kingsbury has talked up since taking the job. He's a guy that he recruited while in his short tenure at Texas A&M. So there's some familiarity with Ricky Seals Jones. Expect for them to run a lot of two tight end sets and possibly limit the wide receivers in Arizona. I mean, I expect a pretty good bit out of Christian Kirk in year two, but if Murray's in that offense, we're gonna go to that air raid style offense that Cliff Kingsbury runs. I'm gonna need to see a little bit in the preseason out of this, and it's tough to gauge how we're going to look at the fantasy values of the players on this team. I think the biggest boom for that is going to be David Johnson. I think we're going to see a return to value of David Johnson in 2019. A lot of catches out of the backfield. I think they're going to utilize the running back in ways that they could not imagine in 2018. I know David Johnson was a headache for a lot of fantasy owners out there that drafted him a little bit high, expecting the return to form. Did not happen. I think we might get that in 2019. What do you think about David Johnson?
Classic post type superstar. I mean, last year coming back off the injury there, people had didn't exactly perform up to snuff. So a classic guy that I know I love to draft. Going down a little bit lower than probably he should. I'm sure in drafts this upcoming season, probably got to pounce on.
Yeah. Staying with the quarterbacks, you did mention Dwayne Haskins. I still like his value more myself, a little more than Kyler Murray. But with where Kyler Murray's going to wind up getting drafted, I think that's going to change things. Haskins, you mentioned the Giants. I think the Giants are in play. The Raiders possibly in play for Dwayne Haskins. I think he obviously has more dynasty upside. He's going to be a second round pick in dynasty drafts. But for redraft, he's definitely not going to be on the radar. He's going to be a guy that's going to be sitting out there on the waiver wire. Drew Lock is probably the only other quarterback in this class that I think might have any type of fantasy appeal 2019 and beyond. We've mentioned before, and you've probably seen all over social media and everything, that this is one of the weaker quarterback classes that we've had coming out in recent memory. I really think you've only got these three guys that are going to be worth anything, whether it be in dynasty formats, whether it be late round value in 2019. Yeah, that's how I'm going to have them set up right now: is Kyler Murray, Dwayne Haskins, Drew Lock, with Lock possibly being in play to a team like the Denver Broncos, perhaps. I think I've read a little bit that said that they've kind of looked in on Drew Lock. So, what do you think about those three? And do you have another quarterback that you might mention with this class?
So I think that's my 1, 2, 3. It's going to depend on where these guys are going. Daniel Jones, I'm not sold on.
Not at all.
As far as no, I tell you the other guy I'm not really sold on is Ryan Finley. I'm not really a huge Ryan Finley fan either. I think he's a lot of guys. Number 5 guy in there as well. A lot of I know some people based on his combine effort the other day. I don't know what they were looking at, but some people like this Tyree Jackson guy. Buffalo. He's got the height, but he was not impressive to me. I don't know. I don't know where all this stuff is coming out that he
Got a
did
bullet
really
for an
well.
arm. That's the thing. Bullet for an arm. Performed
I
well at the Senior Bowl. That's what he
I
has
mean,
going for him right now.
he threw the ball far, but I didn't really. I was not impressed.
Nah.
Me personally,
Yeah.
I was not impressed with the guy.
I mean,
So
he's going to be an EJ Manuel type. It's kind of who I've comped him out to be.
and I don't know why. The offense he played is one of those system offenses, but
Yeah.
the one other guy I may take a look at, and I think a lot of it is going to depend on if he gets a system that is conducive to his skill set. But I do think the one other guy that he'd probably be my number 4 quarterback. Before the draft years, Will Grier. Will Grier would probably be my guy that if somebody else out of these other quarterbacks is going to hit, I think it's going to be him.
Yeah, I mean, I like Will Grier. You're not going to get an argument out of me. I've watched plenty of tape off of Will Grier this past season. He's just one of those system quarterbacks, and he throws in rhythm. If you get him off rhythm early in a game, his accuracy completely goes down the tubes. Somebody you might probably see come off the board really late in the draft is Jarrett Stidham from Auburn, which we have a little bit of familiarity with watching SEC football. But that guy's a complete project. I think you're not gonna see anything out of that guy for years and years down the road. Definitely a learn and grow situation for a quarterback like a Jarrett Stidham. I've heard him. The Redskins have been interested in him, and that's just. I mean, most of these teams that are going to be interested in these quarterbacks are teams that are desperate for a quarterback right now, and that does not breed success. So, yeah, our top 3 are the same. We've got a couple of guys that we're watching as the draft approaches as well, getting ready for pro days. So, but moving on to the running backs, the disappointing effort from this running back group at the combine this last weekend. Who's your winner and who's your loser that you've seen from this group over the course of over the weekend here?
Yeah, winner for me. I mean, I think Darrell Henderson. I think was one of those guys that a lot of people thought, oh, this guy's a bigger back. He's not as fast. He put up a really solid time. Obviously, the 4.39 that he originally put up got backtracked a little bit, but he still had a really
drop back to
good
4.49 on that
time. Right, but hey, even 4.49 for a guy of his stature is really good. The guy who I think it would be hard to find anybody else that hurt himself more at the running back position. Elijah Holyfield did not look good at all.
Yeah.
Yuck.
Yeah. I'm right there
he
with
looked,
you.
He looked slow.
Top 10.
He looked slow. Yeah, no, 100%. He did not look good. I am not an Elijah Holyfield fan. I think at best he would be a complimentary number 3, not a third down, but a number 3 running back. I just don't. I don't see Elijah Holyfield doing much in the NFL.
Yeah, nah. I mean, the upside was there coming in. Yeah, who's to say he wasn't a little bit injured coming into the combine? Maybe kind of run on some tired legs as he prepared for the workouts. That's been some word associated with Elijah Holyfield and that horrible workout that he put forth. Another guy that I was down on from the weekend was Devin Singletary, the Florida Atlantic product. A lot of hype on this guy coming in. There was a lot of people that had him inside their top 5 headed into the combine. I was one of them. I was thinking he was going to show a lot of speed at the combine, but he did not. The 4.66 that he ran in the 40 was very far off from what people were expecting. They were expecting low 4.4s from this guy that shows a lot of burst when you look at his game field. So that's probably going to be a situation where probably has more game speed than he has actual workout speed. So he's going to have a lot to prove at his pro day, but I think he definitely affected his stock and pushed himself back into a day 3 pick as it stands right now. I thought he probably could have snuck into day 2 if his workout would have been great, but he kind of dropped down the board for me a little bit. I think he's right down towards the bottom of my top 10 now. But as it stands, top 2 for me. Really, if you want to look at top 3, top 3 for me, I've still got David Montgomery holding strong as the RB1. Even with the kind of slower 40 time than what was expected, I think his measurables, and if you go look at his game film, I think the guy's solidly the best running back in this class. We're going to compare apples to oranges over the course of the next few weeks, but Darrell Henderson is my number 2. I'm inching closer to moving him to be my number 1 running back in this class. A lot of
Wow.
I like what I see out of the guy. I've watched the guy at Memphis for 2 years. I know he can play. I understand it's a gimmick offense. It's a wide open offense. Really conducive to open a lot of holes, to get him a lot of space. But the guy's elusive. The guy can run you over. The guy runs with power. He can catch it out of the backfield. He has an expanded skill set that I think is going to really translate into the NFL in a really good way. But outside of that, Josh Jacobs. Everybody's on Josh Jacobs right now. He's the much ballyhooed running back from Alabama who was injured the week before the combine, did not do any drills. For me, that kind of speaks a little bit to what I've been pointing out to Josh Jacobs over the last few weeks, is that he was not given a large workload at Alabama. And one of the reasons why he wasn't given a large workload at Alabama is because he was constantly battling small injuries. He was nicked up a lot. A lot of people are going to say, "Oh, Damian Harris commanded that backfield." Sure, he did, but if Josh Jacobs was that great of a prospect, he would have forced his way into that backfield and commanded more touches than what he got over the last couple years. So that's my top 3 as it stands right now. What say you on your running back? Say your top 3 out of these prospects.
Yeah, and if we're playing in a PPR league, I hate doing it. I'm probably right. I think David Montgomery is easily my number 1. Josh Jacobs probably 2. Henderson is probably my number 3. I tell you who would be my number 4 though. And it's another guy. I know we talked about Darrell Henderson impressing during the combine. There's one other name that really impressed me during the combine, and I think has probably moved up my personal draft board here before the. That's Miles Sanders.
Yeah, I was going to say, let me guess, and it would be Miles Sanders.
Yeah, of course we're on the same guy. No, Miles Sanders, I think is they showed kind of a side by side with him and Saquon from last year, and he actually beat him in the 40-yard dash. But
yeah,
no, I think Miles Sanders is one of those guys that he had a complete combine. He had the kind of combine that you'd want to see. Guys, and I real quick that I wrote down here that I was also impressed with. Trayveon Williams is another name that in SEC circles had a great year. I think that's got some carryover factor. And the other name that really impressed me, and I think obviously I think it's more of a PPR name and not so much as a regular standard league. James Williams out of Washington State. I know a lot of the analysts were kind of predicting him to be, kind of a Darren Sproles, James White kind of a guy who's just going to catch the ball, has some speed, really just more of that receiving back. If you're going in a PPR league, depending on the team he goes to, could be a year 1 guy.
I'm on par with you there. Trayveon Williams did have a very highly productive 2018 with Texas A&M. He's been steadily inside my top 10 since I've started the process, and I wrote about him in my running back article before the combine started that was on Rotoballer just last week. So go and check that out for sure. Pull it up on the website. I was a big fan of Trayveon Williams. Like you mentioned, Miles Sanders was a guy that I wasn't familiar with at a high level, but as I kind of dug into some of the tape that I pulled up on the guy and watched and did a lot of film on him and dug into the statistics and everything, coupled with the combine effort that he put forward, he's jumped up in my book a high amount. I think I've moved him up in as far as RB4 on my board currently. So he made a big splash with me during the combine. Another guy that snuck into my top 10 was Alex Barnes. Alex Barnes, the running back from Kansas State, had a very good showing at the combine as well. Snuck into my top 10 Measured out really well. Ran a 40 at a 4.59, and it even did fairly well in the agility drills too. That not every single running back ran and tested in over the course of the weekend. So I think Alex Barnes showed a little bit for me there. And another guy,
Tell you what, I would love to see. I'd love to see Bryce Love, man. I
yeah,
just want to see. I just want to see what the guy's got. I mean, he was projected to be a first rounder last year. Obviously, had some injuries. This last season. I'd love to see the guy and see what he's got. He's such a dart thrower right now. You have no. I mean, he could somebody could fall in love with him. He can go early part of the second round, or he could last quite a while too.
yeah, and that's the thing with like, if say you look at some of the more established running backs that aren't really names that are holding firm inside people's top tens right now, but I think you could carve out roles in the NFL. Like you mentioned there, another guy, Weber, Mike Weber from Ohio State. I mean, I think he's going to be another guy. He showed solid usage at Ohio State, did well with the touches that he had, produced at a high enough level in a Power Five conference. I think Mike Weber's going to be a guy that you can grab late in your dynasty drafts. I think he's going to be obviously selected in this draft. Let's see what kind of role he carves out for himself in the NFL as well. I mean, both of those two names are guys to keep an eye on as we get into the pro days and get closer to the NFL draft. Biggest thing to keep an eye on is going to be the free agency as that kicks off here in the next few weeks. That's going to determine who's going to need running backs, who's looking at running backs in the NFL draft, and the way that the combine went for some of these guys, I think you're going to see names slide down the draft board a little bit. There's going to be some tremendous value as we get further down the board, as you get into round 3, round 4, round 5. Yeah, lots of value out there. But then we're gonna move and transition over real quick into the probably more the sexy position from this past weekend. The much talked about wide receiver performances of the NFL Combine. I mean, you can't really talk wide receivers without talking and starting off with DK Metcalf. A lot of people saw the 40 times. A lot of people saw the broad jump and everything he did as far as measurement wise. Everybody was just talking this guy up to the moon. He's the second coming of Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, if you want to read everything that you saw on Twitter. So, DK Metcalf, buying the hype, is he your wide receiver 1 right now, or do you have question marks on DK Metcalf moving forward?
I don't know so much as I have question marks. I like DK Metcalf. I knew he was big, but holy shit, man!
Yeah,
that guy is a freak.
6'3",
like, how is he not? How is he?
Is what he measured out at?
How is he not going to be really good at the next level? Like, how is that possible? So so ironically, and because I know we have some sets of teammates on, this thing, I don't know if I just don't like AJ Brown a little better. I don't know why, but I think his hands are a little better. I think he's a little bit more of a crisp route runner, whereas DK Metcalf is I think a little bit more of a straight line guy, a jumper. So in terms of who I like more, I might like AJ Brown a little bit more, but DK Metcalf is definitely right up there, probably my top 3.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. AJ Brown has been above DK Metcalf for me throughout the entire process. He's going to be more valuable at the NFL level because he's shown that he can run a complete route tree, has better hands. I mean, as agile and athletic as DK Metcalf is he's just not the Adonis that DK Metcalf is with his 1.6% body fat, which could be called into question. Yeah, we'll see how the tests come out after the P test was administered at the combine, but it's hard for me to imagine a guy that can get legally to 1.6% body fat. That's hard to do, ladies and gentlemen. But I mean, you
I
mentioned
hadn't
it.
ate a carb in 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, this guy, like, you can't tell me that this guy. I mean, he said during the combine and interview process that he ate a donut, one donut during the entire time he was getting prepared for the NFL Combine. I don't buy it one bit with this guy. But like what you mentioned, I mean, the guy runs a 4.33 40 at 6'3", 228, which everybody loses their minds over. He goes into the agility drills later on that day, and in the 3-cone drill in the 20-yard shuttle, he was second worst in the 3-cone drill, third worst in the 20-yard shuttle. So to me, that shows me this guy is going to be a one-trick pony potentially in the NFL. He can run that way. He uses right. he uses his athletic ability and strength to break off press coverage, and can get separation that way. But if this guy's going to get played in like a zone coverage at the NFL level, and you actually have a defensive back covering him two different ways, quarterback and a safety over the top, how's this guy going to find any holes in coverage is my question. He can't break off a route clean, and going over to the middle to try to catch a contested pass might be a little bit iffy for this guy. So, I mean, I think he's going to be really good. I think there's a high ceiling there for him. I'm not going to the level of Julio Jones with this guy yet, which everybody else is jumping at. And like I mentioned earlier, I put it on Twitter earlier when I was, I kind of answered something that Jake Seeley put out on Twitter, mentioning DK Metcalf. I'm almost more veering towards the fact that this guy could be a Dorial Green Beckham more so than he's going to be a high-end, upper-tier wide receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I think he has the ability to be a Pro Bowl guy. Yes. I think a lot of that depends on where he go. Where does he go? B, who does he have around him? Is he, he's not going to be a guy that if you're the number one, teams can't double team this guy and totally eliminate him. But if you go somewhere where you have like a Tyreek Hill or an Antonio Brown, or where you're going to stretch the coverage and leave this guy single covered, he's going to be a beast. So I think it depends on where he goes, who has thrown him the ball, and the situation he's in. But I mean, the measurables on this guy are ridiculous. If they don't throw him the ball, that's on whoever.
So one rumored landing spot that I'd seen earlier today, or I think maybe late last night, Pittsburgh Steelers in round 1. What are your feelings, say he were to be selected by the Pittsburgh Steelers? Obviously to replace Antonio Brown as a receiver in that setup, but I mean, they just drafted James Washington last year. Obviously, James Washington's much smaller than a DK Metcalf, so we're going to be looking at DK Metcalf running the old Martavis Bryant route tree. Is that what we're looking at here?
What a setup for him, though. I mean, you got Juju probably getting double teamed out there. James Washington is good. You got some other receivers over there. A couple tight ends that are going to be taking coverage off. How could you not find a better scenario for DK Metcalf? You got a quarterback that they're predominantly going to be chucking the ball. That's a win-win right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's for me. If he were to get drafted to the Pittsburgh Steelers, I would possibly vault him up into my wide receiver 1 as far as dynasty values, and probably even rookie wide receivers coming off the board in a redraft. So, I mean, I like that destination. Another a funny spot that I saw someone mention on social yesterday as well was that they would be shocked to not see Al Davis come out of his grave and select DK Metcalf at 4 with the Raiders. It smells like Darius Hayward-Bay all over again. This guy ran crazy numbers at the combine. Oh my God, he's got so much speed. We've got to take him. I don't see John Gruden pulling the trigger on that, but I mean, I'm not going to rule it out either. We saw John Gruden completely clear house last year, trading Khalil Mack to your Bears, trading Amari Cooper to my Cowboys. I mean,
thanks again for that, bud.
Yeah. I mean, Gruden helping both of our teams out.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost see a scenario for the Raiders if they did do that, to where they would get, they would get, one of the pass rushers there at 4. I mean, that's too much. There's too many.
The Raiders have
You know
accumulated
what?
so many
And
picks and need to grab players. I think that's what we know about the Raiders going into this draft.
Now, that could be a scenario too, to where you trade down and off this first round pick, trade back from 4 to 8 or 9, accumulate an extra first or second rounder there. I mean, that's a great scenario for the Raiders. The Raiders need players. Holy crap, do they need players?
Yeah, without a doubt.
And players, and they need a lot of them.
But
I'll just, before we go on to talk more wide receivers, coming in a couple weeks ago, I think I was looking at this wide receiver group. Like, there are not a lot of good wide receivers that I'm really just excited about. And then the combine happened, and then I really started looking a little bit more at the receivers that are available. This class is deep. This class is deep with a lot of big guys. I mean, there is some speed here, but it's really deep. I keep going down the draft board here, and you get like little Jordan Humphrey out of Texas, who I was, wow, that's exciting. David Sills out of West Virginia. I mean, that is a good prospect. He's probably, third, fourth, fifth round kind of guy.
I'm a David Sills mark. I mean, I love David Sills and what he can bring to the table in the NFL. The guy's going to be, the next coming of
Jordy Nelson.
You could probably say Jordy Nelson. Yeah. I like that comp. Adam Humphries, probably going to be a better version of Adam Humphries from Tampa Bay. Adam Humphries is a guy that a lot of people were probably almost, I think, putting on the New Orleans Saints right now. But we'll get into talking about stuff like that when we get into talking a little bit of free agency talk. But, yeah, David Sills, I'm really high on David Sills. I'm really interested to see where he falls. I think he's going to wind up probably getting taken in 4th round in this draft is where I've kind of got him pegged right now. But I'm like you, yeah, I thought that the draft class with these wide receivers was very, very top heavy when I first started jumping into the numbers and doing some of the backlogging information. But man, that combine and watching some of these guys this last weekend, a lot of people jumping off the board now, very, very deep, like you mentioned yourself. We haven't even mentioned our former favorite Tennessee Vol, Jalen Hurd.
No, he's been hard to. It's been hard to evaluate.
Yeah, he's one year in Big 12 at Baylor. Wasn't he second team wide receiver for the Big 12 this year? He had a very solid year for Baylor.
I don't know. I don't know what he finished up at, but he did have a solid year. I was impressed he can make that transition. Let's just say, he has a nose for the end zone.
Yeah, of course he does. And rumored destination already. Dallas Cowboys round 6. I've already read that the Cowboys are very interested in Jalen Hurd later on in this draft, and I would not be shocked to see us pull the trigger on a player like that. You could almost make the case that he could be a more athletic kind of. You could plug him in as a guy that you're going to line up out wide as a tight end type. I think he's going to be a guy that I'm going to look at and keep an eye on later on in the draft as well. I do have him inside my top, especially top 50 in Dynasty currently.
Yeah, I wonder too if it's one of those things. Now, granted, I know in college that wanted to switch your receiver and all this jazz. What happens if his NFL team wants him to play a little running back and kind of mix it up? It could be really intriguing.
Yeah. He could be another Cordero Patterson. Like how the Patriots utilize Cordero Cordero was used in a similar situation at the University of Tennessee. I think that could be something that we could see out of Jalen Hurd as well. The multifaceted type of player. can move him all around the formation. You can put him in the backfield. He can run like Tyreek. I mean, he could run running back routes like Tyreek Hill. You can split him out wide, like we just mentioned. He's shown that he can be able to do both. I mean, he's a late round, like I said, late round guy that you can grab that has a little bit of intrigue for me. Probably not going to make too much noise in 2019, but dynasty setups, he's a guy that, say you roster him deep and deep onto your bench, see how he plays out, see how things look. I mean, getting back into kind of the upper echelon, the top tier of the wide receivers, I think N'Keal Harry solidified his spot for me as the wide receiver 1 in this draft class right now. Measurable wise, looked every bit as good as DK Metcalf. He ran just as well as DK Metcalf. So for me, Harry's a solid number 1 right now amongst this group. But I've got A.J. Brown at 2 right behind him, followed by DK Metcalf at 3. Those are my top 3 as we stand currently.
Let me ask you this: who is your biggest wide receiver? Plus and minus after the combine?
Minus the guy that probably just did nothing for me, and I was probably expecting a little bit from the combine, was Riley Ridley, the Georgia product. Calvin's little brother. I think many people were probably a little high on him just because of the name and just because he came from Georgia. But if you really kind of dive into the numbers and look at the game film, he did nothing to jump out on tape for me. I started to slowly drop him down my board, but then the combine happened. And now he's completely out of my top 10. Moved him out for sure. Yeah, I don't see. He's a smaller wide receiver. I like the prospects of some of these guys that I've got ahead of him a lot more because they're bigger, a little more meat on the bone, a little more athletic, can run a lot more. The route tree's a little bit better than what Ridley can present. But I would say a plus for me for the weekend, and not a lot of people. Some of the more smart evaluators and some of us that were out there kind of doing the work heading into the combine, Andy Isabella from UMass really showed out. I had him as my number 10 receiver headed into the combine, but everything he showed at the combine solidified what I saw in the kid on tape, and diving into the numbers, and I've even moved him up a little bit more slightly into my top 10 right now. I think I've got him at wide receiver 8 currently. I think he's going to be a guy that steps right onto the field in 2019, is going to have some PPR value, especially later on in the year. He's going to play slot role in one of these offenses that's going to pick him up. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see him go to. I mean, I joked around about it, but going to New England, it just seems like the obvious fit. A white slot receiver. I mean, that's an obvious thing. I wouldn't be shocked to see him go to, say, a New Orleans. He's going to go to an up-tempo type of an offense. I think whoever's going to be smart enough to grab him and plug him into the slot, it's going to be a good thing for an Andy Isabella. And you're looking at a guy that's going to make some noise later on in 2019. Might not get into the end zone a ton. That's not going to be his game. But he's going to be a guy that's going to give you a solid floor in PPR formats, I think, as early as his rookie year.
Yeah, I know for me, and I know we were talking about it the other day whenever the combine was on, but the guy that impressed me the most, and I don't know if I watched a ton of stuff on him, but just the way he performed at the combine really impressed me. But that's Paris Campbell out of Ohio State.
Fast.
Really impressed me. Yeah, fast. He's just one of those guys that he looks like he is going to have that next level ability in the NFL. So he really impressed me. Another guy that I think more solidified his spot than I think quote unquote impressed me, but Hakeem Butler out of Iowa State is just
moved
that
up my
big
board as well. Yeah,
big, huge receiver. Kind of reminds me, a lot of what Alshon Jeffrey did. Just kind of coming out, just a big, tall guy that at worst is going to be your red zone threat. And could do a lot more after that. So. A guy for me that didn't necessarily impress as much as what I was hoping to see. Kelvin Harmon didn't necessarily just jump off the tape to me.
You have to wonder if a little bit of that was Finley throwing him the ball, that if he was just a great quarterback chucking him the ball, but he didn't really impress me that much during the combine.
Yeah, ran a
so
very
I think
slow
he's moving
40,
he's moving down
4.6.
Yeah, he's moving down the boards a little bit for me. And just like with all these guys, it's going to depend on where you go. We're seeing this right now. A lot of it is just going to depend on where these guys are going, and we'll be there front and center in Nashville to usher them in on where they're going.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of diving back into Paris Campbell, like you mentioned. I kind of see a little bit of DJ Shark out of him. Where he falls is a big thing. If he hits on the right team, I could see him going to like a Cincinnati, somewhere along those lines. A team that's going to be a little bit more receiver needy, but they're going to probably plug some holes earlier in the draft and try to get a receiver out of this deep class later on. I think you're going to see, that's a potential landing spot for a Paris Campbell type. But like I said, I kind of comp him a little bit to DJ Shark. Similar build, similar type of game. So you might not see too much of an impact in year one out of a Paris Campbell type, which if you really want to get down to the nuts and bolts of it, the rookie receivers over the course of the last few years have not really kind of made their mark in year one in fantasy. These are guys, that are, you have to give them a year or two just to kind of really get their feet wet and get comfortable, get used to their surroundings. Not everybody's going to be an Odell Beckham, pop onto the scene year one and just blow things out of the water. I really don't see a receiver in this class that's going to be to that level. You're going to have some guys that are going to make some noise. You might have a Calvin Ridley in this draft class, a guy that's going to score you some touchdowns, but the production's going to be very erratic from week to week with a lot of these guys.
You're going to have draftable guys in redraft leagues, for sure.
Obviously, yeah. Which most of the case is, we do the SBFFC, the big high stakes draft out of Bowling Green, Kentucky. Of course, by the way, go check that out at sbffc.com. We're taking teams for this high stakes draft right now as we speak. So go check that out. Pull up any information you can on that league. But that's going to be a league, for instance, like that. You're going 21, 22 rounds. You're going to try to pull the trigger on a late round gem with some of these rookie wide receivers like so many of us did last year. Myself and you, we both took shots in the dark at DJ Shark late in the draft last year, hoping he would stick at some point during the year. I did not come to fruition, but of course we dropped him early on and picked up better players to put in that position. So you're going to see a lot of that with this receiver class as you get into especially redraft leagues like you mentioned. But most of these guys are going to really have big time dynasty appeal, I think.
100%.
Yeah, drafting them, having them roster ready for year 2, year 3. Your guys like you mentioned with a Hakeem Butler, like we've talked about DK Metcalf, N'Keal Harry. Deebo Samuel is another guy we've not mentioned yet that I think is going to have a big, big impact in the NFL. These are all guys that I'm going to expect a lot of and be startable players in redraft leagues probably in year 2. But some of them might have that late round hit in 2019. But these are going to be guys that are going to be just every week starters for you in Dynasty come 2021. So do the due diligence, do the homework on some of these guys. Go back and look at some of the tape if you can, but especially look at their numbers. Because some of the production that these guys have had in college is going to translate into the NFL because they're going to land in similar offenses. So, like you mentioned, deep wide receiver class. I like what I see out of some of these guys. We're probably gonna have a chance to talk about a few more of these as we get further down the road, especially once we get to the draft. We're gonna have a lot of talk, a lot of detail that we're gonna probably go into with some of these players. So, I can't sing enough praises from what I saw out of this wide receiver group this weekend. So,
agreed. And I think when we get into when we're starting to talk dynasty drafts, I think I'm not as impressed with the quarterbacks. I'm not as impressed with the running backs. Where I'm going to be impressed with is going to be at the wide wide receiver position, and I'm sure what we're about to talk about, the tight ends.
Yeah, that's what. Kind of the last thing I wanted to touch on with the wide receivers. I mean, if you're in a dynasty format that's been in play for years, and you're a wide receiver needy team in a dynasty format, this is your year to cash in. There's no bones about it. I think you're going to be able to hit guys in the first 2-3 rounds. They're going to be solid contributors for you to help you build a winning team here down the road. But yeah, like you mentioned, kind of last group that we're going to jump into is the tight end position. I mean, we've talked a little bit off air on this, and I think even though we've talked about this being a very deep class of tight end, a lot of the people on social have mentioned that this is a deep class of tight end, just like wide receiver. I think it's a 3-horse race. I mentioned that to you last night. Although our 3 are kind of a little bit interchangeable, we both agree on Noah Fant being the top tight end in this group, except I have him followed by Hockenson. You have Irv Smith at number 2. What do you see out of these tight ends? Do we see any type of appeal year one out of these guys? I know we're talking about easily positive dynasty influences out of these guys down the road. But any redraft appeal out of these? I know it's going to be primarily dependent on landing spot, which all these players are. It's predicated by that. But
sure.
Yeah, how do you feel any type of value in redraft for 2019 out of the tight ends?
100%. If anything, I don't think it matters as much where obviously it matters where everybody goes, but I think the tight ends are a little more immune to landing spot as, if somebody's taking a tight end in the first round and taking, these guys in round 1, they're going to have some kind of a use for them. So me personally, that's why I think Fant is up there. Fant reminds me a lot of Trey Burton, but a little bit more polished of a prospect than Trey Burton. Trey Burton, in college was, kind of a human joystick playing in a lot of different positions. So Fant to me is just more athletic. I mean, he kind of brings that whole complete combo to the pack. Hockenson, the reason I have Fant over Hockenson is up that high because of his blocking ability. Hockenson's a great blocker. Guess what? We don't count blocking stats in fantasy. So that's awesome that you're a great blocker. I can appreciate that, but that's not going to necessarily translate to – it may translate to you being a higher draft pick, but it's not necessarily going to translate to me liking you more. So I think Fant is the better receiver of the two, so that's why I have him higher. So I think he is going to be probably a fringe round 1 prospect, probably, even depending on where he goes, maybe as high as 6 or 7 among this group. So Irv Smith, I think is really good too. I mean, he's a bigger guy, but he's got great hands. I think Irv Smith is another one of those guys too that, depending on his landing spots, easily going to be a round 1 guy for me. Easily going to be a guy that, probably for me is going to be, in redraft leagues and probably Fant as well. You're going to be looking at, if you take, one of the, guys outside of the top 4 or 5 at tight end, he's going to be one of those tight ends you jump on a little bit earlier to be able to go there. I think I heard a comparison the other day that I really like for Irv Smith, and that's O.J. Howard. I think it's a really good comp.
Obvious comp from Alabama.
Sure. But, they tend to get the same kind of guys, and guess what? I mean, he really favorably to that.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, they even asked Noah Fant how he felt like his game translated in the NFL, and he said he felt like he's a cross between Travis Kelce and Zach Ertz. So yeah, of course you want to put your name out there with some of the best tight ends in the game. Obviously, I mean, you're not going to sell yourself short and say I'm going to be the next coming of some bust tight end out there. Irv Smith, actually, I think I favor him more towards the type of like a Jared Cook. Yeah,
I can see that too.
Yeah, I mean he can block. He actually showed he's got the blocking prowess at the University of Alabama. But the thing is he can get out there and run routes too, like a Jared Cook can. I mean, maybe he's leaning more towards an Eric Ebron. That's another possibility on that as well with Irv Smith. If he's going to be an Eric Ebron type, then I'm going to move him up into that range where he could be more towards my tight end too in this draft class. He probably has more PPR appeal because of that, but I think I like Hawkinson a little bit better. I think his game's a little more well rounded as it stands right now. Um, one of these three guys is almost destined to go to the New England Patriots. Almost destined.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I mean, the news came out the other day. They've released Dwayne Allen. We don't know about Gronkowski yet, but all indications are that he's possibly going to retire. If you watched him play last year, and if you owned him in any type of fantasy football aspect, you probably think he needs to retire because he was not good. I mean, if you look at the depth chart, then at that point in time, the New England Patriots are going to need a tight end. They're going to get one in this draft. Will they pull the trigger on one early out of these top three guys? That's for us to find out as we get into April. So, if you see the Patriots take the Patriots take Hawkinson late in round one, is he going to be vaulted into your tight end one spot?
Depending on where the other two guys go. I mean, you could have somebody like Fant go to
the rumor on Fant, and that's going to be the biggest. That's going to be probably the biggest thing in the draft as we get towards it. Detroit Lions at pick 8. A lot of people are thinking the Lions are going to take tight end at pick 8, and it could be Fant.
Apparently your dogs are disagreeing there. The ankle biters are.
Yeah, I mean that is the Woo fantasy dogs in the background.
I mean, Fant going to the Lions at 8 doesn't really do anything for me. I mean, that's great that they draft him high, but in that case, Hawkinson would vault up my board a little bit. Comparatively, just for the situation that you're going into. You go to somewhere like, maybe the Bills where he could be, essentially like a number one receiver kind of guy. That keeps him at that number one slot. Maybe you go to, Houston Texans where he could be the instant number 2, right behind Hopkins. That could be a spot that he stays up there too. A lot of it's going to depend on where these guys go. If Fant does go to somebody like the Lions, I don't like that as much just because of Stafford seemingly not liking to use the tight ends as much.
Never utilizes the tight end, exactly.
Why would you go there? They would be a lot better pressed to be able to select a wide receiver at 8 over not being used.
Yeah, I agree. There's going to be so many moving parts with this draft. That's probably one thing we do know. Landing spot, like we keep mentioning, landing spot is going to be all the rage when it comes to the fantasy value of these players. But it all starts with the free agency. I mean, that's no bones about it. We're getting ready for that to kick off here in the next few weeks, like I've mentioned before in the episode. A couple of dominoes that we're waiting to fall, just to kind of preface free agency right now. A couple of dominoes we're waiting to fall when it comes to fantasy currently. Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown. As we stand right now, what's your feelings on those two players? Where do you think they're going?
I keep trying to think of any other scenario that does not have Le'Veon Bell going to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Really?
It just seems like it would line up way too well. There's been rumors out there that that's what's going to happen. I think that would be such a great move for him. You're going to an offense that they love, throwing the ball to the running backs out of the backfield. I think that'd be a great spot. So,
yeah, I mean,
other landing
that's going to keep him as an RB1 for sure if he lands in Philadelphia.
100%. I mean, they have decent running backs, but I mean, who do they have right now? They got Josh Adams and they got Wendell Smallwood. Sproles retired. I think that would be a great landing spot for him.
A dark horse team for the Le'Veon Bell sweepstakes right now that not a lot of people are mentioning, and I would probably say to keep an eye on Baltimore Ravens.
Yuck.
I mean, they're going
maybe
to run the ball a ton.
Go, but yeah. I mean, but Le'Veon's value isn't to run; it's his receiving ability. I mean, I don't really care.
What can Lamar Jackson do as a quarterback? He's either going to run the ball himself or throw a very short to intermediate pass or drop it off to the running back out of the backfield.
Yeah, but he didn't really do that last year.
He didn't do it last year, but that might be an aspect of his game that they expound on.
I would knock Le'Veon down a little bit for that.
I
I
would
really
too, but like I said, that's a dark horse team for me. I think I've had Le'Veon since the process started, and we've decided that he's leaving Pittsburgh. I felt like the Texans were going to be the spot that he was going to land in. I think they're going to let
that'd be a
Lamar.
great.
I think Lamar Miller. They're going to let Lamar Miller walk, and I think they're going to probably go after Le'Veon Bell to give themselves a team for a Super Bowl run.
Yeah, I mean,
That's what I feel.
that would be a great landing spot for him. I mean, I know the Colts have been thrown around a little bit, especially with their
And the
cap
Colts
room.
have flat out decided they're denied any type of interest in Le'Veon Bell.
As they should. I mean, Marlon Mack had a good year last year.
And Marlon Mack and then, Chris Ballard, their GM, over the course of the weekend, they even mentioned the fact that Marlon Mack is our guy. So,
yeah, no, absolutely.
They're sold on him right now.
The other most likely scenario, me personally, I think it's a 3-team race. I think the Texans, I think the Eagles, the other team is the one that we have not mentioned.
The Jets,
only because of their cap space. Absolutely, is the Jets.
Yeah, that's what everybody's mentioned as is that is the high favorite for Le'Veon Bell because I mean I guess if you're going to go with any team whatsoever, it's going to be the team that can give them the most money, and that's the team that has the highest cap space. So I think Le'Veon Bell, like you mentioned, is I would hate for him to go to the Jets for fantasy value purposes, but it seems like a likely landing spot because he seems like the guy that's just in it for the money.
Yeah, no, agree. Well, and guess what? I mean, Sam Darnold, started to really come on toward the end of last year. I mean, it wouldn't be worst
they
lane.
did utilize Elijah McGuire towards the end of the year as a pass catcher out of the backfield, so
it wouldn't be the worst spot. He would still be a number one running back if he were to go there.
I agree with you there. So let's move on. We'll talk about Antonio Brown real quick as kind of getting towards the end of the wrapping up this episode as we kick off the 2019 season. Here on the Woo Fantasy Podcast, Antonio Brown with the absolute nutcase that is Antonio Brown currently. Have you seen his new venture today? Yeah, I want to touch base on that real quick. Have you seen?
Are you talking about his mustache? Or?
No. I'm not talking about the Hulk Hogan. What you gonna do, brother? When my skills come to your football team, what you gonna do? I know. I'm not talking about the Hulk Hogan mustache that he's rocking currently. No, he signed up for a website called Cameo that you can send a request to Antonio Brown, and he will record you a personalized message for $500 a pop. So
I think I've seen this with other celebrities and other things.
Yeah,
that does not surprise me.
I was watching one earlier today, and he was wishing someone a happy second wedding anniversary. It was the sweetest video I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, Antonio Brown, I don't know what he's currently on. I don't know if he had a mental breakdown, but yeah, I think he is causing himself more strife for NFL teams than what he realizes, and he's affecting his potential to be a productive NFL receiver in 2019 currently. But where you? I know the rumored 3 spots were earlier today were the Raiders, Broncos, Cardinals, if I'm not mistaken. And since that report has come out, both the Broncos and Cardinals both have vehemently denied being interested in Antonio Brown. So
I think I had heard the other day that it was the Raiders, the Redskins, and the Titans.
That was 3 that were mentioned by Adam Schefter over the weekend at the Combine. So, I mean, this is a discussion that I've had with a couple of Steeler fans over the course of the past few days. But trade him to the Redskins. If you're the Steelers, trade him to the Redskins. If you really want to get back at this guy that has just dogged your franchise for the course of the last few months, continuously runs his quarterback into the dirt, the guy that's made him one of the highest paid receivers in the game, trade him to the Redskins to catch passes from Colt McCoy, Ryan Tannehill, Josh Rosen, of one of those three potential quarterbacks of 2019. Then ask him what he feels, how the level of quarterback play helps him to be a better receiver. For me, I would do that in a heartbeat if I was the Steelers. Just stick it to him.
Oh yeah. Oh, you're going to be missing things in life.
Yeah.
If he goes to any of those three teams, whew, man.
I mean, he almost
How
loses
bad is
wide.
that
He
gonna
almost loses wide receiver one value.
Oh, he better go to like a 49ers.
And John Lynch denied being interested in making a call for him this weekend.
Yeah, but
I mean, it could be smoke screen. We all know that.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see what pops out. I mean, those teams being interested. I mean, that just doesn't do it for me. I mean, if the Steelers really want to just, hey, F you, Antonio Brown, trade him to any one of those three teams.
Yeah, I mean, it was like they mentioned, Schefter mentioned over the weekend the three teams being interested in him: the Raiders, the Redskins, and the Titans. All three were the bottom three teams in the NFL last year in touchdowns scored by the receiver position. So, if that gives you any indication of what the value might be for Antonio Brown if he goes to one of those three teams, there you have it. He's probably not getting into the end zone very much in 2019. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's sad for one of the guys that, I mean, I just, has year over year for the last 5 years been, one of, if not the most consistent wide receiver out there. So
yeah.
I know he's a guy, I mean, he's been the number one overall guy. And I mean, for him to be in the spot that he's in right now, it's kind of sad, but guess what? You brought it on yourself.
Exactly. That's what happens when you become a nutcase in the NFL. That is for darn sure. But I think that's going to wrap things up for the first episode of 2019. Covering our NFL Combine coverage. How are we feeling about getting things kicked back off this season?
I'm ready for baseball season at least to start, but but I'm sure by the time that we're in Nashville at right down on Broadway, watching the picks getting announced there live and in person, it'll start feeling like football season yet again.
Exactly. I mean, you're about to head down and watch a little spring training baseball from everything we've talked about, so I know you're getting excited for that.
2 days away.
Yeah.
Can't wait. It's I don't know about in Tennessee, but in Atlanta here it is in the upper 30s right now and freezing, and in Orlando it is 80-something degrees and sunny all 3 days that we're going to be there. So ready to get out of Dodge.
I don't think it got above 30 today in Tennessee or in Jackson, Tennessee, where I am located. So if we're it's like I saw something on the internet the other day. Apparently, Punxsutawney Phil was arrested for filing false claims. We did not get the 6 weeks of winter, or it's extended past that, and who knows when it's going to go away at this point in time. But all I know is I'm ready for it to start getting a little bit warmer myself. I'm ready to start getting out there playing a little golf. The daughter is now officially on a softball team. Big ups to my daughter Dani. Finally getting her feet wet to deciding to play a little softball. Proud dad moment for myself right now.
Hopefully she can hit just as good as you.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, like we were at trials just the other night. She didn't drop a ball on the field.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super excited. I think we might have some prospects of a first baseman on our hands right there. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's
Freddie. Got to get her to do some Freddie Freeman stretches over there.
Yeah, first. Hugs, stretches, and scoops. That's how we do things at first base.
Sounds like a T-shirt design.
That's exactly. I'm gonna turn that in. That's gonna be. I'm gonna turn that into RotoWear. Actually, that's the fantasy sports apparel company. I'm gonna turn that in.
All right, nobody can take that. By the way,
trademark.
Go ahead. We're trademarking.
Trademarking that. TM. Hugs, stretches, and scoops. That's great. That's was the store the store that's down there in the village around around Atlanta down there. What is that ball? The little baseball t-shirt store.
Baseballism.
Yeah, baseballism. That's a baseballism shirt right there.
Right.
We got to go talk to them at the marketing department. Anyways, yeah, getting ready. Gonna possibly try to do another podcast this upcoming next week. We'll see how things fall in line. I know we're gonna have a lot of things to talk about the closer we get to free agency. So be on the lookout for that. Like I mentioned as well, rotoballer.com is the new home for all of Roto Superstars work going forward. So check me out on there. Of course, we're FanDuel as a sponsor as well. Definitely go and plug in on that if you're getting ready to play a little bit of daily fantasy baseball. Woo Fantasy promo code will get you started right there, get you extra dollars in your bank account to get started on the 2019 season. But other than that, you got any parting shots, Mr. Heffley?
No, man, just find me on Twitter at the Real FF Goat.
There you go, the Real FF Goat there. Of course, follow me at Roto Superstar on Twitter, and follow this show that you are currently listening to right now at Woo_Fantasy. And we will catch you guys again later on for another episode of Woo Fantasy. Woo!